The beer mug shattered against the wooden floor with a violent crack that silenced Murphy's Roadhouse instantly. "You think you're something special?" Viper Jackson's voice cut through the sudden quiet like a blade, his massive hand wrapped around the collar of the small woman who'd been wiping down tables. The snake tattoo coiling around his thick neck seemed to writhe as he pulled her closer, his breath reeking of whiskey and menace. "I asked you a simple question, sweetheart. This bar pays protection or this bar burns. Which one's it going to be?" Elena Rodriguez kept her brown eyes fixed on the floor, her body language screaming submission, even as 10 members of the Desert Vipers Motorcycle Club rose from their seats, forming a predatory circle around her. She was maybe 5'4" in her worn sneakers, her white server's shirt hanging loose on her slight frame. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail made her look even younger than her 35 years. Everything about her whispered, ordinary, forgettable, weak. But in exactly 15 minutes, Viper Jackson would be on his knees, begging for forgiveness. The tension in Murphy's Roadhouse had been building for 20 minutes before that glass shattered. The Desert Vipers had rolled in their Harleys, announcing their arrival with a thunderous roar that made every patron in the small roadside bar tense up. This wasn't their first visit to establishments along the highway near Camp Pendleton, and their reputation preceded them like a dark cloud. 3 bars in the past month had mysteriously caught fire after refusing their protection services. 2 owners had ended up in the hospital with injuries that the victims claimed came from accidents. Elena had watched them enter while she methodically folded napkins at the service station, her movements precise and economical. Jake, the 25-year-old bartender, had immediately started sweating when he saw the skull patches on their leather vests. "That's them," he'd whispered to Elena. "The Desert Vipers. They're the ones who burned down Rossetti's place in Oceanside." She'd simply nodded, continuing to fold napkins in perfect triangles, each one identical to the last. Jake had noticed this about Elena in the 6 months she'd worked at Murphy's. Everything she did had an almost military precision to it. The way she wiped down tables in perfect grid patterns, the way she arranged condiments with geometric accuracy, the way she never had her back to the door for more than a few seconds at a time. Viper Jackson had made his entrance like a conquering king, all 6'3" of him, swaggering through the door with his arms spread wide. The snake tattoo that gave him his nickname started at his jaw and disappeared into his leather vest, and his shaved head gleamed under the bar's amber lights. His 9 companions spread out behind him in what Elena quietly noted was a tactically sound dispersal pattern, covering exits, maintaining sightlines, establishing dominance over the space. "Evening, folks," Viper had announced to the dozen or so regular patrons, his voice carrying that particular tone of false friendliness that preceded violence. "Don't mind us. We're just here for a friendly drink and a little business discussion." The regulars, mostly veterans from the nearby base and local blue-collar workers, had shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sheriff Tom Bradley, a grizzled 55-year-old who'd done 2 tours in Iraq before coming home to serve and protect, had been nursing a coffee at the corner booth. He'd set down his cup slowly, his weathered hand moving to rest near his hip, where his service weapon would have been if he'd been on duty. Elena had approached their table with her order pad, keeping her eyes down and her voice soft. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" That's when the first sign of trouble had sparked. One of the bikers, a wiry man with meth-rotted teeth, had slapped her backside as she walked past. "How about you start with a smile, sweetheart? You look like someone died." She'd simply stepped out of reach with a fluid movement that looked accidental, but wasn't continuing to take their orders without acknowledging the assault. Jake had started to move from behind the bar, his young face flushed with anger. But Elena had caught his eye and given an almost imperceptible shake of her head. The bikers had ordered beer, lots of it, and Elena had served them efficiently and quietly. That's when she'd felt the weight of Viper's attention settle on her, like a physical thing. She'd been wiping down a nearby table when he'd called out, "Hey, server girl, where's Murphy? We need to discuss some business." "Mr. Murphy is in Phoenix for the week," Elena had replied quietly, not meeting his eyes. "I'm just covering shifts." Well then. Viper had stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over her. "I guess you'll have to relay a message for us. Tell Murphy that the Desert Vipers are offering our protection services to this fine establishment. $5,000 a month, and we guarantee nothing bad happens to this place." Elena had continued wiping the already clean table. "I'll let him know you stopped by." That's when Viper's demeanor had shifted from fake friendly to genuinely menacing. "I don't think you understand, sweetheart. This isn't a social call. This is a business requirement. Every bar from here to San Diego is under our protection. Those that refuse..." He'd pulled out a lighter, flicking it open, and closed with practiced menace. "Well, accidents happen. Electrical fires, gas leaks, tragic stuff." "I understand," Elena had said softly. "But I can't make decisions for Mr. Murphy. I just serve drinks and clean tables." The formation the bikers had unconsciously taken around her had a name in military tactics: encirclement. But there was a weakness in their positioning that Elena had catalogued automatically. The one by the jukebox had his weight on his bad knee. She'd noticed his slight limp when he walked in. The two by the pool table were focused on intimidation rather than observation, missing Sheriff Bradley's slow shift to a better defensive position. Viper himself was standing too close inside the reactionary gap, a mistake born of overconfidence. Elena's fingers had found the small piece of metal hanging from the chain around her neck, hidden beneath her loose shirt. The worn dog tag was warm against her skin, a reminder of who she used to be, who she was trying not to be anymore. 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, 15 confirmed kills, 4 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart. All of it locked away in a storage unit, along with her dress blues and her gunnery sergeant chevrons. She'd come to Murphy's looking for quiet, for peace, for a place where she could just be invisible and serve drinks to people who didn't know what it felt like to have blood on their hands. But trouble, it seemed, had a way of finding Marines, even retired ones, trying to disappear into civilian life. Elena quickly checked her reinforced tactical smartphone, its military-grade aluminum casing cool against her palm. The device's encrypted communication capabilities and satellite connectivity were designed for extreme field conditions, a habit she couldn't break even in civilian life. The specialized security features meant she could call for backup that would actually understand the situation, though she'd sworn to herself she'd never need to use those contacts again. The phone went back into her pocket as silently as it had emerged. "Look." Viper had said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "I'm trying to be nice here, but you're making this difficult. How about this? You seem like a smart girl. You convince Murphy to see things our way, and maybe I'll throw in a little bonus for you. What do you make here? Minimum wage, plus tips. I could make sure you're taken care of." "Thank you, but I'm fine with my current arrangement," Elena had replied finally, looking up at him. Her brown eyes were calm, almost serene, which seemed to infuriate him more than defiance would have. That's when he'd reached out and wrapped his meaty fingers around her upper arm, squeezing hard enough to leave bruises. "Listen here, you stuck-up little... I'm going to have to ask you to take your hand off the lady." Sheriff Bradley had stood up, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Even in civilian clothes, he had that unmistakable bearing of a career soldier. Viper had laughed, not releasing Elena's arm. "And what are you going to do about it, old man? You're off duty out of your jurisdiction and outnumbered 10-1. Sit back down before you get hurt." But the sheriff hadn't backed down, and several other patrons Elena noticed, at least 5, were wearing unit pins or military tattoos, had shifted in their seats, ready to back his play. The air in Murphy's had grown thick with the promise of violence. "Tom, it's okay," Elena had said softly, using the sheriff's first name. "These gentlemen were just leaving." That's when Viper had made his crucial mistake. He'd yanked her closer, his other hand reaching for her collar. "You don't tell us when we leave. We leave when we're good and ready. And right now I'm thinking we need to teach this whole bar a lesson about respect." The sound of chairs scraping against the floor had filled the bar as more patrons stood up. Jake had grabbed the baseball bat they kept behind the bar. But Viper's attention was entirely focused on Elena, on establishing dominance, on breaking what he saw as inappropriate resistance from someone who should have been cowering. "You know what your problem is?" He'd snarled, his face inches from hers. "You think you're better than us. Think you're too good to show proper respect. Maybe I need to remind you of your place." His free hand had grabbed the front of her shirt, bunching the fabric in his fist. Elena had remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled, her eyes steady. To everyone watching, she looked like a terrified server, trying not to provoke more violence. But Sheriff Bradley, with his 2 combat tours worth of experience, had seen something else. The way her weight had shifted to the balls of her feet, the way her hands had positioned themselves, the way she'd angled her body to create space for movement. "Last chance," Viper had growled. "You're going to call Murphy right now and tell him he's got a new business partner, or things are going to get very unpleasant for everyone here." "I can't do that," Elena had said simply. That's when the shirt had torn. The sound of ripping fabric was shocking in its finality, the white cotton parting from collar to mid-chest, as Viper yanked with all his considerable strength. Elena stumbled backward, the ruined shirt hanging open, revealing the black tank top underneath. But it was what that tank top revealed that changed everything. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the jukebox seemed to pause between songs, as if the universe itself needed a moment to process what had just been exposed. Across Elena Rodriguez's back, visible through the thin fabric of the tank top, was a work of art that told a story of service sacrifice and elite warrior status. The eagle globe and anchor of the United States Marine Corps spread majestically across her shoulder blades, the detailed work so precise you could make out individual feathers on the eagle's wings. But it was the text beneath that made several veterans in the bar gasp audibly. First Force Recon was inked in bold letters, marking her as a member of one of the most elite special operations units in the Marine Corps. Below that, her designation, Gunny E. Rodriguez, 0311, the Military Occupational Specialty Code for Infantry, the tip of the spear, the ones who go where others fear to tread. But the tattoo was only part of the story. Surrounding it were scars, the kind of scars that told their own tales to those who knew how to read them. A puckered bullet wound near her left shoulder blade, the telltale marks of shrapnel along her ribs, a long, jagged scar that disappeared beneath the tank top's hem, suggesting a blade wound that had required serious medical attention. Viper Jackson stood frozen, his hand still clutching the torn fabric, his mouth slightly open as his brain tried to process what he was seeing. Behind him, his fellow Desert Vipers had gone equally still, the predatory confidence draining from their faces like water from a broken cup. Force Recon. Sheriff Bradley breathed, his voice carrying clearly in the silence. Holy hell. The transformation in Elena's bearing was subtle, but unmistakable. She hadn't moved, hadn't taken a fighting stance, hadn't done anything overtly threatening. But something in the way she held herself had changed, like a switch being flipped from civilian to warrior. Her shoulders squared, her chin lifted, and when she finally spoke, her voice had lost its soft, submissive quality. "Mr. Jackson," she said, using Viper's real name, which she shouldn't have known. "I believe you owe me an apology for destroying my property." The shift in the room's atmosphere was palpable, like the pressure change before a thunderstorm. Viper Jackson's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally, the dawning realization that he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. His grip on the torn fabric loosened, and the white cotton fluttered to the floor like a surrender flag. "How do you know my name?" His voice had lost its commanding bass, climbing higher with uncertainty. Elena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned slowly, giving everyone in the bar a clear view of the military artwork and battle scars that decorated her back. Several phones had appeared, people recording what they sensed was a moment they'd want to remember. But Elena didn't seem to notice or care. "Stephen Jackson," she said calmly, "dishonorably discharged from the Army 6 years ago for stealing and selling military equipment. Founded the Desert Vipers 3 years ago, currently wanted for questioning in 4 arson cases and 2 aggravated assaults." She paused, letting that sink in. "I make it my business to know who's threatening the establishments in my area of operation." "Your area of—" Viper started, then stopped, the full implications hitting him like a sledgehammer. From the corner booth, a grizzled man in his 60s slowly stood up. Elena had served him coffee every Tuesday for 6 months, never knowing he was Colonel Mike Harrison, retired Medal of Honor recipient. "Gunny Rodriguez," he said, his voice carrying the snap of command despite his civilian clothes. "First Force Recon. I remember you now. Operation Phantom Fury Fallujah 2004. Elena's stance shifted slightly, an unconscious response to a superior officer. "Sir, you're the one who held that schoolhouse for 17 hours with a broken rifle and 3 magazines of ammunition while the evac choppers tried to get through." It wasn't a question. "I had help, sir. Lance Corporal Williams and PFC Chen." Her voice caught slightly on the names. "They didn't make it out." Another patron stood up, Maria Santos, who ran the flower shop down the street. Nobody knew she'd been a Navy corpsman attached to Marine units. "I was at Camp Leatherneck when they brought you in. 60% burns, 3 bullet wounds, enough shrapnel in you to set off a metal detector at 50 yards. The doctor said you'd never walk again." "Doctors can be wrong," Elena said simply. The Desert Vipers were backing toward the door now, their earlier formation completely broken, but they found their path blocked by 5 men who had quietly repositioned themselves during the conversation. Each one had the bearing of someone who'd seen real combat, not the bar fights and intimidation tactics the bikers were used to. "Leaving so soon?" asked one of them, a Hispanic man, with sergeant stripes tattooed on his forearm. "But you haven't apologized to the lady yet." Viper's face flushed red, caught between humiliation and his need to maintain face in front of his crew. "Look, we didn't know she was, if we'd known—" "Known what?" Elena stepped forward, and despite being nearly a foot shorter than Viper, he took an involuntary step back. "That I'd bled for this country, that I'd earned the right to be treated with basic human dignity, or just that I could hurt you in ways you can't even imagine." During the tense confrontation, Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her lower back, where she kept a compact medical kit hidden beneath her server's apron. The professional-grade trauma supplies included military hemostatic agents and combat medications designed for battlefield emergencies. The advanced clotting compounds and pain management solutions had saved lives in Iraq and Afghanistan. Tools she still carried out of habit, because a Marine is always prepared even when serving drinks in a roadside bar. The weight of the kit was reassuring, though she prayed she'd never need to use it again. All of the above. Viper admitted, his voice small. Sheriff Bradley had moved closer, his hand resting casually on his phone. Ms. Rodriguez, would you like to press charges for assault? We have plenty of witnesses to the unwanted touching and destruction of property. Elena considered for a moment, then shook her head. No need, Sheriff. I think Mr. Jackson and his friends were just leaving and they won't be back. Will you, Mr. Jackson? The threat in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. Viper nodded rapidly, his shaved head bobbing like a dashboard ornament. No, ma'am. We won't be back. In fact, we'll make sure everyone knows Murphy's is off limits. Completely off limits. And the other establishments you've been threatening? Elena's tone suggested this wasn't a request. We'll reconsider our business model, Viper stammered. Kneel. The command cracked like a whip, and Viper found himself dropping to his knees before his conscious mind could process what was happening. It was the voice of someone used to absolute obedience in life or death situations. Ma'am. He looked up at her, confused and terrified in equal measure. You assaulted me, destroyed my property, threatened my workplace and my colleagues. Elena's voice was calm, almost conversational. In some parts of the world I've operated in, you'd already be dead, but we do things differently here. So you're going to apologize properly, and then you're going to leave, and you're going to spread the word that this entire county is under the protection of Marines who've seen scarier things than you on our easiest days. Viper's apology was stuttering but sincere, delivered on his knees in front of his entire crew and a bar full of witnesses. When Elena finally nodded her acceptance, he scrambled to his feet and headed for the door, his fellow Desert Vipers following like whipped dogs. At the threshold, he turned back. Can I ask, why hide it? Why pretend to be just a server? Elena's expression softened slightly. Because, Mr. Jackson, real warriors don't need to advertise. We don't wear our strength on the outside. We carry it quietly and use it only when necessary. I came here for peace, to serve coffee and wipe tables and remember what it feels like to be normal. You took that from me tonight. The bikers left without another word, their motorcycles starting up with notably less swagger than they'd arrived with. Through the window, patrons watched them disappear into the night, and everyone somehow knew they wouldn't be back. The bar remained quiet for a long moment after they left. Then, Colonel Harrison spoke up. Gunny, if you don't mind my asking, what are you doing here? With your record, you could be doing anything private security law enforcement teaching at Quantico. Ilana picked up her torn shirt from the floor, folding it with the same precision she'd shown with the napkins. With respect, sir, I've done my time being extraordinary. I've been the tip of the spear, the first one through the door, the last one out. I've got 47 confirmed kills, and probably twice that unconfirmed. I've got a box full of medals in a storage unit and nightmares that wake me up at 3 a.m. every night. She moved behind the bar, pulling out a spare Murphy's Roadhouse shirt from the employee cubby. I came here because nobody knew who I was, because I could pour coffee for construction workers and not have them thank me for my service with that look in their eyes. You know the one, sir, the one that's equal parts awe and pity and fear. But they ran you out, Maria Santos said softly. Those pendos took your peace. No, Elena said, slipping on the fresh shirt and buttoning it with steady hands. They reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, that peace isn't something you find by hiding. It's something you create by standing your ground. Jake, who had remained frozen behind the bar throughout the entire confrontation, finally found his voice. "Elena, I had no idea. 6 months we've worked together, and I never—" "That was the point, Jake." She smiled at him, and it was the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her. "I didn't want to be Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, Force Recon Marine. I wanted to be Elena, the woman who makes sure your coffee is always fresh and your tables are clean." "But you're a hero," someone called out from the back of the bar. Elena's expression hardened slightly. "No, Williams and Chen were heroes. They died protecting civilians. I'm just someone who was too stubborn to die, and too damaged to do anything else but survive." Colonel Harrison approached the bar, his movements careful and respectful. "Gunny, I know we don't know each other well, but I want you to know what you did in Fallujah, holding that position, protecting those kids. Williams and Chen didn't die for nothing. 37 children made it out because of what you 3 did." Elena's hands stilled on the bar towels she'd been folding. 38, sir. 1 more was born in the evac chopper. Mother named her Elena." The room fell silent again, the weight of that revelation settling over everyone, like a benediction. Here was a woman who had literally given her body as a shield for innocence, who had paid in blood and burns and bullets for the safety of children she'd never met, and she'd been content to disappear into anonymity, serving beer and wiping tables. "So what now?" Jake asked. "I mean, everyone's going to know. Word's going to spread. You can't go back to being invisible." Elena considered this as she resumed her normal duties, collecting empty glasses and wiping down tables as if nothing had happened. "Then I guess I'll have to be visible. But on my terms." Over the next hour, the bar slowly returned to something approaching normal. Conversations resumed, drinks were ordered, and the jukebox played its usual selection of classic rock and country. But there was a different energy in the air. People sat a little straighter. Veterans who'd been nursing their PTSD in silence found themselves talking to each other, sharing stories they'd kept locked away. The revelation of Elena's identity had somehow given everyone permission to be more themselves. Sheriff Bradley approached her as she delivered a fresh round to a table of construction workers. "Elena, I want to apologize. I should have intervened sooner. I saw the signs, the way you move, the way you observe everything, but I didn't put it together." "Nothing to apologize for, Sheriff. You did exactly what you should have done, tried to de-escalate." She paused, then added, "Army Right, Iraq." He nodded. 2 tours infantry. Nothing special. Just a grunt doing his job. Every soldier is special, Sheriff. Everyone who stands up when others won't, who goes where others fear to go. Don't diminish your service. As the night wore on, Elena found herself fielding questions from curious patrons, but she answered them with the same quiet efficiency she showed in her serving. Yes, she'd been in Force Recon. No, she couldn't talk about most of her missions. Yes, the scars hurt when it rained. No, she didn't regret her service, just some of the things service had required. Around 11 p.m., as the bar was winding down, a young woman approached her hesitantly. She couldn't have been more than 22, with the lean build of a runner and the 1,000-yard stare Elena recognized all too well. "Ma'am, I'm Lance Corporal Sarah Webb, just back from Afghanistan. I heard what happened, what you said about not being able to go back to normal." Her voice dropped. "How do you do it? How do you come back from that and just function?" Elena set down her tray and gave the young Marine her full attention. "You don't come back, Lance Corporal. Not really. The person who left doesn't exist anymore. You build a new person with the pieces that survived, and you find a new mission. Elena gestured around the bar. This serving people, creating a place where veterans can come and not have to explain themselves, where civilians can learn that we're not broken, just different. Where someone like you can ask someone like me how to survive and get an honest answer, which is one day at a time, one table at a time, one act of service at a time. The skills that made us good Marines, attention to detail, dedication to mission, protecting others, they don't go away. We just have to find new ways to use them. As closing time approached, Elena found herself alone with Jake as they cleaned up. The young bartender kept shooting her glances, clearly bursting with questions. "Go ahead," she said finally. "Ask. Do you regret it, having your cover blown?" Elena considered this as she turned chairs upside down on tables for mopping. "You know what? No. I've been hiding for 3 years, trying to pretend that part of me didn't exist, but it does exist. It's as much a part of me as my eyes or my hands. Maybe it's time to stop running from it." "Will you stay at Murphy's? I mean, where else would I go? This is my post now, and Marines don't abandon their posts." The next morning, Elena arrived at Murphy's to find the parking lot fuller than usual for a Saturday. Word had indeed spread, and veterans from 3 counties had come to see the Force Recon Marine, who had faced down a biker gang with nothing but quiet authority and a revealed identity. But Elena didn't make a spectacle of it. She simply tied on her apron, made fresh coffee, and began taking orders. When people thanked her for her service, she accepted graciously, but redirected conversation to their own lives, their own stories. Murphy himself, back from Phoenix, pulled her aside during the lunch rush. "Elena, I heard what happened. If you need time off or if you want to quit." "All due respect, Mr. Murphy, but I've got tables to serve," she added with a small smile. "Besides, I think business is about to pick up. Every veteran in Southern California is going to want to come to the place where a Force Recon Marine tends bar." She was right. Over the following weeks, Murphy's Roadhouse transformed from a simple roadside bar to an unofficial veterans gathering place. The walls began to feature photos and memorabilia donated by patrons. A small library of military history books appeared in one corner. Every Tuesday became Veterans Night, with Elena's quiet approval. But perhaps the most significant change was in Elena herself. She still wore the simple server's uniform, still cleaned tables with meticulous precision, still made sure everyone's glass was full, but she no longer hunched her shoulders to appear smaller. She no longer kept her eyes down. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove and nothing left to hide. 3 months after the confrontation with the Desert Vipers, Elena was surprised to receive a package at the bar. Inside was a purple heart, polished to a mirror shine, with a note. "Goonie Rodriguez, you left this behind at Leatherneck. Thought you might want it back. Corsman Santos." Elena held the medal for a long moment, then walked to the wall where other veterans had begun displaying their memorabilia. She hung it carefully next to a photo someone had managed to find: 3 Marines in full combat gear, faces dirty but smiling, standing in front of a bullet-riddled schoolhouse. The caption read, "Heroes of Fallujah, LCPL Williams, PFC Chen Gunny Rodriguez." "You know," Jake said, joining her at the wall, "I've been thinking about enlisting." Elena turned to look at him, studying his young face carefully. "Because of you, because of what you represent. Service, sacrifice, something bigger than yourself." "Those are good reasons," Elena said slowly. "But make sure you're doing it for you, not because you're impressed by someone else's story." The Corps will take everything you have to give and ask for more. Be sure you're willing to pay that price. Were you willing? Every damn day Jake and I'd do it again, but that's me. You need to find your own answer. As she walked back to take another order, Elena caught her reflection in the mirror behind the bar. The woman looking back at her wasn't the naive 18-year-old who'd enlisted full of patriotic fervor, nor was she the broken veteran who'd tried to disappear into civilian anonymity. She was something new, something forged in the crucible of service and tempered by the choice to serve again in a different way. Warriors don't need recognition, they serve. The words had become her motto, her explanation to reporters who occasionally showed up, wanting to do a story about the biker bar Marine. She served coffee and cleaned tables, and listened to stories, and provided a safe space for those who needed it. It wasn't Fallujah. There were no medals for it, but it was her mission now, and she would complete it with the same dedication she'd brought to every other mission in her life. The eagle globe and anchor on her back, once hidden like a shameful secret, now stood as a reminder to everyone who entered Murphy's Roadhouse. Here was sacred ground. Here, veterans were understood, civilians were welcomed, and everyone was treated with dignity. Here, a United States Marine stood watch, not with a rifle, but with a coffee pot. Not in a combat zone, but in a roadside bar. Still serving, still protecting, still faithful. Semper Fidelis, always faithful to the Corps, to her fallen brothers, to her new mission. Elena Rodriguez had found her peace not in hiding from war, but in continuing to serve in peace. And Murphy's Roadhouse would never be the same. In the quiet corners of a roadside bar, like Murphy's Roadhouse, where ordinary lives intersect with hidden storms, Elena Rodriguez's story unfolds as a profound reminder that true strength often wears the disguise of humility. We see her a seemingly fragile server, with downcast eyes and precise movements facing down the menacing desert vipers, a gang of bikers who thrive on intimidation and fear. But beneath her unassuming white shirt lies a tapestry of scars and tattoos, the eagle globe and anchor of the United States Marine Corps, etched with the elite mark of First Force Recon. This revelation, triggered by a torn fabric and a moment of unyielding resolve, shatters assumptions and ignites a wave of respect. Elena, a gunnery sergeant, with 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, 47, confirmed kills, and a Purple Heart, tucked away in storage, chose anonymity not out of weakness but from a deep yearning for peace after the horrors of war. She traded her rifle for a coffee pot, her combat boots for worn sneakers, seeking to heal in the shadows. Yet, when confronted with injustice, her warrior spirit emerged, not with violence, but with quiet authority that brought a bully to his knees. This tale teaches us a timeless life lesson. Never judge a book by its cover, for the most powerful souls often carry their battles silently. In a world quick to label people as weak or forgettable based on appearances, Elena shows that real heroism lies in the courage to stand firm, to protect others without seeking glory. It's a call to empathy, urging us to look beyond the surface and recognize the unseen struggles and strengths in everyone we meet. Imagine the lives we've misjudged, the quiet colleague with untold resilience, the stranger harboring stories of sacrifice. Elena's journey from hidden veteran to beacon of hope reminds us that peace isn't found in hiding our scars, but in embracing them to create safe spaces for others. Her words echo, "Warriors don't need recognition, they serve." This emotional truth hits hard, evoking tears for the fallen, like Williams and Chen, and admiration for those who rebuild amid nightmares. Have you ever misjudged someone only to discover their hidden strength? Or perhaps you've concealed your own battles? Share your stories in the comments below. I read every one, and they inspire us all. If these tales of unexpected heroes move you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Join our community for more powerful true stories that reveal the extraordinary in the everyday. Your support keeps these narratives alive. Let's uncover more hidden warriors together.